Good evening, everyone. I am Dheeraj Khadka from IIT Bombay. So we will be starting the event shortly. Before starting the event, I would like to mention a few things. This entire event is being recorded at our end. So the post-event material will be uploaded on our Grid Integration Lab website and the LinkedIn page. Also, as and when the speakers come up, I request speakers to kindly turn on your camera and mic. So first, let me walk you through the agenda items for this event. So the event will start with the keynote address by Mr. Shashank Jewalikar, Executive Director SLDC MSETCL. Then we have a presentation on study on SCED implementation in Maharashtra State Grid by Professor Zakir from IIT Bombay, followed by a very interesting panel discussion on SCED implementation at MSLDC state level with Mr. Shashank Jewalikar, Executive Director SLDC MSETCL, Mr. Sushil Kumar Soonee, former and founder CEO POSOCO, Mr. Debasis, former Executive Director Grid India, and Dr. Chattopadhyay, the Power System Specialist, World Bank, as our esteemed panelists. And then the event would end with a Q&A session and a vote of thanks. The report on this study has been already launched and it can be accessed by scanning the presented QR code here. Uh, Next, due to the paucity of the time, we have an open Q&A session of only 20 minutes for this event. Therefore, during the course of the event, if the audience has any questions, I request you kindly put them in the Slido for the questions, which can be accessed by scanning the QR here or from the link in the chat box. In Slido, the participants can ask question and upvote their relevant question in the forum so that the most popular queries that are there are clarified by our panelists first. Now, I request Mr. Shashank Jewalikar, the Executive Director SLDC MSETCL, to kindly deliver the keynote address.
So good evening all, and thanks for joining. Just to give you a glimpse of what we are going to do today. The energy landscape is rapidly changing. Maharashtra power system is large and constantly growing and increasingly becoming complex as we observe from the dispatcher's point of view. We are advancing steadily on its journey towards energy transition, preparing to integrate substantial amount of renewable energy resources, especially solar, as we all are aware about the various schemes ongoing into Maharashtra. Managing this massive volume of data while addressing the evolving constraint demands adoption of more advanced scientific tools. The dispatch processes that we have been historically following have served us well. However, we also recognize that the increasing penetration of renewable energy and introduction of dynamic market mechanisms, there is a need for continuous improvement and modernization. On this background, and responding to the larger thinking of Maharashtra uh, government overall energy transition plan, Maharashtra SLDC joined hands with Grid Integration Lab IIT Bombay and took up initiative to come up with this study for optimizing power dispatch through implementation of security constraint economic dispatch in the state of Maharashtra. We were supported and guided by the MSETCL management. We were also very much supported by state's energy department and all the authorities over there. We also think that we are responding to the initiative taken up by Forum of Load Dispatchers, SCED, and subsequently we jointly became the first state to complete such study, which is being presented today. Working with Grid Integration Lab of IIT Bombay has immensely helped Maharashtra SLDC for building in-house capabilities and sharing into this new domain of SCED. This industry academia tie-up, I'm sure, will enhance further and help us build on to important aspects of grid management with a motto and spirit of Make in India. We were very much supported by World Bank by provisioning of GAMS and sharing the know-how. Today, we will delve into findings of this study, focusing on economic merits, greater reliability improvements, information matrix improvement, and support for renewable integration. This study signifies a major leap and also chalks out many actionable points for us, which we will be subsequently completing in future. It wouldn't have been possible without expertise of Grid Integration Lab, IIT Bombay, the FOLD team, the NLDC team supporting us, and experts like Soonee sir and Debasis sir while conducting these studies. I also sincerely thank Sri Sanjeev Kumar ji, CMD MSETCL, and Abha Shukla madam, the whole of MSETCL management, Chief Secretary Madam Abha Shukla, for the unwavering support that we have got into these activities and initiatives of SLDC. The results of this study are truly impressive and revealing that the implementation of security constrained economic dispatch in Maharashtra can unlock significant benefits to all the stakeholders. Apart from substantial cost saving and enhanced grid security, the informational aspects derived out of knowing of the shadow prices and various constraints in a, is also a very important aspect of this study. We will also discuss the practical considerations for implementing SCED, including the need for data management, computational needs, and capacity building. The study recommends a phased implementation, starting with a pilot, followed by a rigorous evaluation of SCED performance under various operating conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your inspiring words. Now, I would like to invite Professor Zakir from IIT Bombay to kindly present the study on SCED implementation in Maharashtra State Grid. Over to you, Zakir, sir.
Thank you, Dheeraj. So a very good evening to all the participants who are present in this webinar on one of the first of its kind studies at the state level, as Mr. Jewalikar already mentioned it. Before going into the summary of this study that is captured in this presentation, of course, it is a detailed study, and the voluminous report is already available in public domain for detailed understanding of the study. So this presentation is primarily aimed at covering the major aspects and conclusions that have been derived from this study in this MSLDC Maharashtra State. Before I go into the details of this presentation, I would again, for those who have joined late, would like to inform that there is a Q&A session that we have planned in this webinar, and the platform for Q&A is Slido. You can scan this QR code. Also, the link is there in the chat box. I would request him to once again post the link there. You are requested to put up your questions, queries that you may have on this Slido platform, and after the panel discussion, we will take up those Q&A questions for further discussion. I would also request that there might be large number of questions, queries. I would request other participants to vote which query that they feel, because those queries, questions will be visible to all the participants who is accessing this link, to vote the query question that you feel is more relevant, so that will help us in arranging the questions in the chronological order, taking the most popular one first, and so on and so forth. So let us start with, I think the background has been already given of this study, why it started and all that. Let us start with what is currently being practiced in many of the states, or in general, the conventional practice of scheduling generation, that is generally bucket filling approach, which is also known as merit order dispatch. So what happens is, broadly, in a bigger picture, the inputs to this merit order dispatch are demand requisitions from the discoms that come to the SLDC, number of interstate generators on the bar that are there for a given block of 15 minutes in India, and generator static parameters, rating, and other technical, minima and maxima and other static parameters that are there. The other important input are the ramp rate limits, declared capacity of the generator, and then variable cost of the generation, which is very important parameter or input parameter. We have then bilateral contracts that are there interested between discoms and generators, discoms, various discoms and various generators that are there. Then there is the market share that is there, open access transactions, including the procurement that is done from the power exchanges in India. REMC data, which is a must-run generation input that goes to the MOD, and then central share of generation that RLDCs are actually scheduling. So all these different major inputs go to the merit order dispatch or bucket filling approach that is generally being followed currently. And then those baseload plants are there that are maintained, and then must-run plants that are there. For example, renewables, that input goes to the to this MOD, and then this is I would like to mention is a generic, as I mentioned it, procedure for the MOD, not necessarily very specific to any particular state here. And then bilateral contracts are there between, as I mentioned earlier, that are taken care of because there are several discoms which have bilateral contracts with the generators, and their share is accordingly defined in the contracts, and that is taken into account by SLDC in finalizing the net demand that needs to be met by the rest of the generators, and that's how it is done. So there are some fixed generator inputs from the central share, from the bilateral contracts, which we also call a discom share of the generators, and other details, other inputs, and then the remaining demand is actually optimized through what we call as existing practice of merit order dispatch. Now, if we summarize that in some of the few steps that the process of this merit order, net demand that I mentioned is calculated based on all those inputs that I mentioned earlier. Then the generators are sorted in merit order in terms of the cost, with least cost being on top of the rank, and the generator with highest cost being at the bottom of the list. And then generator constraints are actually considered, and then based on that, demand is allocated to different generators. Now, this is very specific to Maharashtra State Load Dispatch Center. This is the general routine that is actually adopted, has been in place in practice for a while at MSLDC, where these different inputs go into the MOD routine, and then based on that, as you can see, RE data, power exchange data, demand requisition by the discom is central share, and these different open access components. And then the remaining demand, the net demand, is optimized for with those generators where we have these variable cost that is declared and are available for optimization after respecting the other contracts that are there in place between various discoms and the generation utilities. And then based on that, the schedule is prepared, and then accordingly the generator schedule is actually posted. Now, that is the general procedure of the merit order dispatch, which is generally in practice in many of the states at state level. So this is what we have been considering as a new approach, or rather a better and effective optimization approach for scheduling generation at state level. In this particular case, Maharashtra State SLDC. And the objective, this security constraint economic dispatch has a broader objective, which is primarily, of course, the cost minimization, but technically you can have any objective set for this SCED. And then we give the inputs to this SCED model, which includes more or less similar inputs that we give to MOD, demand requisition, RE generation, variable cost, generator static parameters, interchange schedule, constraints. All those inputs go to the SCED as well. And then SCED runs this whole optimization routine, SCED optimization routine, after taking into consideration all the constraints that are there, that should be there considered in the overall scheduling, and then gives finally the schedule of each generator. In addition to the schedule of each generator, it gives much more information that's not available in MOD. Marginal prices are given by this SCED. We have ramping prices rather, reserve prices can also be the output of that, and several other outputs, shadow prices of technical minimum, DC and other parameters, sensitivities actually can be extracted from the SCED output, which are very important and powerful inputs to various decisions that can be taken based on those inputs. Now, this is the generic SCED formulation. As I mentioned, you have this objective function that is modeled mathematically here, in this case, cost minimization. And you have the constraints modeled, that is power generation balance, load generation balance, which is generally called as LGB. Technical constraints of the generating units, technical minima, DC, ramping limiters, ramp up, ramp down, and other constraints as well are modeled, and then that is being used to run the SCED optimization setup. Now the question is, which is the first and very important question that comes to the mind of anyone who thinks why there should be SCED that should replace the existing practice of scheduling that is already in place in the system. So there are various benefits. Some of the major benefits are captured in the slide, but there are many more other benefits that are there. The first and foremost is it has a potential of further cost minimization compared to MOD. As you can see here, there is a potential cost savings of as high as we have seen 3 crore per day. That this additional savings that this SCED has actually shown the potential of. Enhanced security, which is very important. In addition to cost, it is very essential that security and stability of the grid is maintained. And this SCED is allowing us to enhance the grid stability, grid security, by ensuring that all these different constraints that are modeled there in the SCED are actually are respected in the overall schedule that's made as the output of the SCED. Increased uptake of renewables, it does help in better integration of the renewables because it takes into consideration all those different constraints that are relevant. It is it provides improved flexibility and adaptability as well as scalability, which is not equally easy in MOD. Similarly, regulatory and market compliance, it does have that advantage that it aligns better with the regulations and the market dynamics. As you can see here, approximately what we have seen is 80% arbitrage potential between state SMP system marginal price and the market clearing price. It does provide marginal price information on the marginal price that I mentioned earlier, which gives a lot of inputs in taking more optimal and informed decisions in the overall generation scheduling. So now the question is SCED something very new that has come to the light here in India? That's not the case. If those who are from electrical engineering background, this is one of the very basic topic that is taught in the power systems fundamental topic. So the concept is very old, and it has been in practice in many other countries already. Some of the select countries are mentioned here, for example, Ireland and Northern Ireland, which has a unsynchronized grid. You have here MISO, Midwest, and then you have Casio is there. You have ISO, New England. Several other examples that you can see here across the globe that are that have already adopted this SCED in their scheduling of the generation. So therefore, the concept is quite well established in the electrical engineering, in the power system operation, and is in practice in many other countries as we speak. And most of you would be already familiar with that. SCED has been already implemented at the NLDC level some time ago, so it is already in being practiced over there. So therefore, as such, it is not something very new to the power system operation that that is in practice already. So this slide is actually capturing different stakeholders, different these organizations that have contributed in this overall study, as already highlighted by Mr. Jewalikar in the initial remarks. So in different capacities, this study has been actually strengthened by different stakeholders, as you can see here, in different ways as a result. So this has been possible with the inputs from several organizations and individuals that has actually helped in completing this analysis and this particular study. Now the table on the right side you can see is highlighting major numbers of this. The data that we have analyzed it and put up in the report is actually for the period of 9th August to 9th September, though we have done analysis for other data as well. But for the data and the analysis that has been reported and finalized and reported is for this 1 month period, roughly 9th August to 9th September 2024. Number of time blocks is around 3,000, and number of generating units that were there is 246. Out of that, 44 units have been the main generating units that were available for optimization, further optimization, I would say rather, because MOD is already doing first tier of optimization in its routine. Total installed capacity that amounts to around 29.7 gigawatt. Net demand profile that I mentioned earlier, how net demand is calculated. Minimum is 6 gigawatt, maximum is around 12 gigawatt here, and the variable cost is around 2.9 rupees per unit to 11.6 rupees per unit. And the SCED optimization that has been developed was actually run in the GAMS tool. So therefore, let us get a little more into the overall timeline that has been there in the journey of this study, as is captured in this. It has been started much earlier than 10th August, but more precise of this as analysis that is reported in this particular report. Started in 10th August 2024, and then several discussions have been happening. Only few of the milestones are there, and the report has been submitted to MERC. And while report is submitted, there is a focus on capacity building and the preparation for the pilot implementation at MSLDC. These are again few numbers and the demand generation in the Maharashtra state. Number of subcontractors you can see are there listed here. Number of generators with subcontractors, and the number of discoms that are considered, not considered, that are there in this in the Maharashtra state, and that have been considered for this SCED is 18 numbers, and then there are interstate generating stations, REMC, RTM, power market, and other inputs, fixed inputs that have been also considered to calculate the net demand. And you can see the demand profile for this entire study period that is varying over the days and day and night, as you can see in this slide. Now, this is the variable cost of the generators that were available for further optimization, starting from 2.9, as I mentioned earlier, to 11.6 rupees per unit. The two values that you see is actually the variable cost is actually changing fortnightly here, and that's where you can see two numbers here in terms of the variable cost declared by the generators that were considered for further optimization. This is showing SCED-driven cost savings block-wise, basically here in crores per time block. And you can see here the total cost for MOD and SCED is shown here. And you can see SCED cost is lower than MOD cost coming out here, in this comparison. So MOD cost is basically the actual data that has been, that is actual schedule that had been executed at MSLDC, and SCED is actually the output of the SCED model that has been run for the same demand and the constraints and the generators that have been there optimized in MOD. So this shows, there has been cost reduction in SCED compared to MOD, and some of the numbers you can see here. Minimum savings day came out to be 16th August potential savings with around 0.04 additional cost savings. Maximum saving day in this entire study period has come out to be around 3 crore for this particular day, additional potential savings in SCED compared to MOD. This is block-wise per unit cost that you can see here. Again, SCED and MOD is actually this yellow and SCED is green. You can see the cost differences there relatively. But what I would like to highlight here is that it's not all about that the SCED is always actually coming out to be cost effective than MOD. So you can see here we have several cases where the cost is coming negative here. Basically, this is MOD cost minus SCED. And you can see there are several occasions where we have negative, which means MOD cost is lower than SCED. So what actually leads to this these particular outliers is basically the ramping constraint and few more constraints that are very adequately actually complied with SCED, and that is actually coming out to be at the cost in terms of the penalties that are considered for violating any constraint, security constraint. This is again just a similar data, but in a different way. You can see this is daily total cost and savings that can be seen here. Saving is on the right y-axis, and the total cost in SCED and MOD on daily basis is shown in these two curves. So you can see there have been the minimum cost savings and maximum here that can be seen here, and this duration cost saving duration curve between MOD and SCED. That difference is actually shown here, where you can see for around 45% of the time the cost, the SCED cost is lower than MOD cost. For around 1% of the time, the MOD cost is actually lower than SCED cost, and for around 44% of the time, the MOD is actually same cost is same as that of SCED cost, which indicates that MOD is doing an optimization. It's not something which is not actually optimizing the cost, but what is actually important here is the SCED is actually optimizing it more effectively and is showing the potential cost savings here. So this is showing the total cost versus demand. Basically, this is sensitivity of the demand cost with respect to demand, which is in the middle. You can see is more of a linear, correlation. And you can see here towards the higher demand on the peak demand side, it's not so linear, because the reason is here the majority of the generators are hitting their DC. As a result, the relation is not linear. Same you can see on the lower side, because on the lower side the generators hit the technical minimum, and that actually leads to this non-linear relation there. This particular slide is showing basically the generation in MOD and SCED, where actually is this cost saving coming. This is a little bit throwing more light on that, so that you can see here. This is, if you start from here, this is the starting point, and then if you go clockwise, it is actually showing increased MOD rate or increased variable cost. So what SCED is actually showing here is that for lower MOD rates or lower variable cost generators, SCED is actually able to schedule more generation than MOD. That's what is resulting into the cost savings. And this is again reflecting similar conclusion that you can see in this particular case, that some of these lower cost generators, this is again in the increasing order of the cost, variable cost. So low cost generators are actually being scheduled for higher generation, while as high cost generators are not scheduled that much in this particular case, and the vice versa is over there. And the ease of operation that can be seen here is in terms of the change in the schedule of the generators that you can see. This actually plot is showing MOD changes in the MOD, changes in the schedule of the generators from one block to another block over the entire study period in MOD and SCED. So number of changes in the schedule that a particular generator goes throughout the study period is actually the number that is reflected here, which is basically MOD minus SCED. And you can see in most of the cases for low cost generators, MOD has higher change in the schedule of the generators compared to SCED. So which essentially indicates there is relatively less changes in the schedule of the generators here in SCED, which can be argued that it does have less impact or stress on the generator because of the lower number of changes in the schedule, which is primarily because low cost generators are most of the time is actually scheduled in this entire period. This is again talking about SMP variation in the centralized SCED that shows that this is the y-axis is actually day-wise, and the x-axis is the time blocks, which show the entire study period here, and the time blocks. And again, you can see that there are basically variations in the state marginal prices, which gives very powerful information, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of taking the right informed decisions. That could be seen here. If you look at this right side plot, this is net load in the state, and this is SMP at the state level, and the y-axis, z-axis is actually savings in lakhs per TB. So at the lower demand, you can see the savings are higher. This is precisely because in SCED, low variable cost generators are actually scheduled maximum, and when you move towards the high demand, the scope for the room for further optimization obviously reduces, because most of the generators are even in MOD actually already scheduled to their DC value. This is another important conclusion that we derived from this exercise, is that we have, as of now, DISCOMs have bilateral contracts, so we have to respect and comply with those bilateral contracts while optimizing the overall scheduling. What we did here is, if you look at the state level SMP duration curve, this is where we are optimizing at the state level, giving the flexibility that there is least restriction of these DISCOMs in terms of the bilateral contracts, which essentially means if we do the optimization at the entire state level without having these local DISCOM constraints of these bilateral contracts. And you can see in most of the cases, state versus each of the DISCOM, for example, here state versus MSETCL, state versus AEML, this is other DISCOM, Adani DISCOM, and then you have Tata Power here, and you have West DISCOM here. So what you can see is here that the state level SCED, this SMP is primarily driven by MSETCL DISCOM, because that has the major share in the entire Maharashtra state. Yet state level SMP is actually coming out to be better for most of the times that you can see here. State level SCED is relatively coming out to be better here, as same is the case in other DISCOMs, which essentially indicates that if we do this optimization at the state level, rather than doing at the DISCOM level with those constraints, that DISCOM share constraints of generators, bilateral contractors, and other DISCOM level constraints, there is a room for further optimization or the cost minimization in the state DISCOM, state SLDC. These are additional inputs. More details are given in the report, but what is there for the regulation and policy inputs, you can see that lower cost generators here are actually, having very low marginal price or shadow price, you can see here, because they are basically scheduled at their maximum. They don't hit the technical limit. This is technical limit marginal price. While as the high cost generators that are there, this is the increasing cost of the variable cost of generators. You can see here, high cost generators actually have higher the shadow price. What it indicates is there is technical intervention for lowering technical minimum of high cost generators actually can have a lot of potential savings, not only for the state, but also for the generators. And vice versa can be seen here, marginal price for DC of the generators, where because the low cost generators are most of the time is scheduled to their maximum, additional technical intervention is to ensure that DC is maximum possible available always is actually, another insights that is there to potentially incentivize those low cost generators to increase their DC in their generators, which eventually actually helps in the entire system cost. This is another important insight that we derived in this entire study, which is the market side of the prices. So what you can see here is the system marginal prices in the state, and this is market clearing prices. So you can see there is, a scope for, taking an informed decision for procurement of the power by discoms, depending on what is the SMP coming and what is the MCP. So in case, as you can see, for 80% of the market procurement time, there is optimizer scheduling for the additional potential savings, where the discoms can potentially procure the additional load from this market wherever the market clearing price is lower. Or in other words, it is a powerful insight in how market and SCED actually can be seen in sync and can be complement each other in the overall system optimization. Now, some of the key observations from this entire study is potential cost savings that I mentioned earlier of around 2 crore on average per day, but potentially state SMP changes by around 7 paisa per 100 megawatt in change in the net demand. There is the arbitrage opportunity between SMP of the state and the discoms, potential for arbitrage for SMP, state and MCP that I mentioned earlier, market and SCED. Additional savings can be there during ramping either up or down. Potential cost savings are there for almost 50% of the time blocks. And then you have potential of production cost savings through SCED around 0.25% during 50% of the time. And then the cost of production increases significantly with the increase in demand that I mentioned earlier. And there's a possible savings per time block when the demand variation from 6 to 8 gigawatt. 20% of the generators only are actually having schedule changes, likelihood of schedule changes indicating less number of schedule changes in SCED. It provides a lot of information, very, very, as I mentioned earlier, also powerful information that is not possible in MOD. And then, marginal price is actually here. The SMP varies from around 3.5 to 6 rupees per unit. Now, the question here is, what is their benefit in SCED for different stakeholders, which is very important because there are different stakeholders here involved in the entire this setup. So the first and foremost key stakeholder is the consumer. If the overall cost optimization is actually there, so obviously it is expected that the customer will actually, or the consumer will actually benefit at the end of the day. System operators will have certainly operational efficiency and economy, and more importantly, they will have better grid security, potentially with the SCED. Discoms, obviously, if SCED is reducing the system cost, will have access to cost-effective power and improved generation scheduling. Generators, as I showed earlier, can have potentially ease of operation of their generators. And also the incentives that I was mentioning earlier in the previous slide of reducing their technical minimum, could further be explored. Regulators have a lot of insights that can be gained from this SCED based outcome. Policy makers can actually make a better use of these outcomes for taking informed decisions, policy level decisions at the policy level. Planners can use actually this for optimal network expansion in the system. So most of the stakeholders, key stakeholders, are actually broadly benefiting, have a lot of potential benefit from this SCED based optimal generation scheduling. So what are the key recommendations that are made here? Data standardization, we learned, is very, very important because a lot of data needs to be exchanged with the SCED from the within the SLDC control center. So it is very, very important that the data is standardized. Otherwise, there can be potentially several issues that can get unnoticed without and a lot of debugging might be required. So we have realized that this is one of the very important actually aspect that needs to be taken into account. Capacity building is one of the most important recommendations that we realized in this entire exercise, that it's very important that the SLDCs and other relevant stakeholders have well-trained manpower for handling this SCED implementation in their control centers. There is a lot of potential for integrating hydro into this SCED, which we have not considered in this particular study. So therefore, that can be further actually considered to further optimize the generation scheduling and generation cost. Renewables, and another important aspect that how we can actually have a better integration of renewables in through this SCED. DISCOM integration is also very equally important, that needs to be integrated eventually for overall better efficiency and other cost minimization. Marginal prices, as I mentioned, is very, very important information that is actually gained from this SCED, which can be used for different important decisions that taking that can be taken in the overall scheduling. Technical modeling is also very important, and further enhancing of the SCED, and including considering the optimal power flow is actually another level that can be achieved in the future. Performance monitoring is very, very important of this entire SCED implementation, and feedback system. Feedback is from different stakeholders is equally very important in this entire process. Now, what is the way forward that we have? Renewable energy integration, how we can better integrate the renewables through this SCED, as indicated earlier. Security constant unit commitment, which we have not gone yet to this stage. So, but that's very, very important as well in the long run. So therefore, security constant unit commitment can actually be also considered. Infrastructure upgradation is required for the implementation of SCED, so that needs to be considered. Centralized dispatch resources, as I mentioned, is very important for which with capacity building and all that will also need additional resources, HR resources, which is equally important. And finally, of course, this is not the whole list, but it's one of the major key list you can see. One of the other important factors that can be considered is the emissions, carbon emissions. That can be also, there can be multiple constraints that can be considered, but the emissions is one of the important constraints that can be thought of, for inclusion in the overall process of this optimal scheduling. What are the future actions that have been planned following this study? Focus on capacity building, that is already we highlighted earlier. Coordination across different stakeholders is very, very critical. Pilot study of this implementation at MSLDC level, and then implementation of interstate SCED. Finally, gradual integration potentially with the neighboring states, that will give further room for optimization to unlock additional resources at the regional level. Integration of SCED at the pan-India level. And eventually the coupling of the market with the SCED. So with this, I would like to conclude this presentation. And before I hand over to Dheeraj, I would again like to remind the participants, again, for those who have joined it late, we have the Q&A session here, and that is being planned or that's being conducted, handled at on this Slido platform. You can scan this QR code, and there is also a link in the chat box, or you can scan this QR code. It will take you to the browser, and there you can ask the questions which we eventually plan to take up with the panelists after the panel discussion. Over to you, Dheeraj. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Zakir, for an interesting presentation on SCED implementation at MSLDC. Now, I would like to invite all of you to join us in a panel discussion on SCED implementation at MSLDC. And for the panel discussion, we have Mr. Shashank Jewalikar, the Executive Director, SLDC MSETCL, Mr. Sushil Kumar Soonee, former and founder CEO POSOCO, Mr. Debasis, the former Executive Director, Grid India, and Dr. Chattopadhyay, Power System Specialist, World Bank, as our esteemed panelist. And the panel discussion would be moderated by Professor Zakir. As reminded by Zakir sir, you can ask your questions during the panel discussion through the Slido, and the link for that also has been shared in the chat board. Now over to you, Professor Zakir, for the panel discussion.
Thanks, Dheeraj. So I would like to welcome the panelists that have been named already here, Mr. Soonee, Mr. Jewalikar, Dr. Dey, and Mr. Debasis. Very welcome to this very interesting panel discussion on the topic that we hope will be very useful for the audience. Without actually, taking further time, I would like to request all the panelists to provide your remarks on broader need for enhancing this overall optimal operation of the power system, both from technical and economical sense. What are your views on this particular aspect? Maybe Mr. Soonee, you can start with your inputs.
Thank you very much, Professor Zakir. I hope I am audible.
Yes,
Somebody
yes.
Yes. So thank you very much. A very, very lucid and very comprehensive presentation. Thanks to Maharashtra SLDC for taking the lead and bringing us to this level that more than 100 participants from different SLDCs and other utilities have joined. And I would start with like this, as Professor Zakir mentioned, SCED is an old thing. It's nothing new. In the literature, it is there. We have all learnt about it. And the unfortunate part was that in India, we had shortages, acute shortages for decades. So maximization was optimization, and hence that did not get the attention which it deserved. And then came the concept of requisition-based decentralized scheduling and all those things. And in the process, the rigor of optimization, a fundamental thing, was somehow, did not get the attention which it deserved. Though the Act says that each NLDC, RLDC, and SLDC will cause economy. But then it remained up to MOD, the regulations. And as you have heard, Professor Zakir, MOD has done a great job, but it's much more can be done with these new tools which have come up. So that is the fundamental issue. Now, everywhere, as Professor Zakir mentioned, every ISOs, they are so conversant with SCED that they don't talk about SCED. Whereas in India, we have to still pick up that. But we can't afford to delay anymore. Every state must run SCED. And other than all what Professor Zakir has mentioned, let me share my experience. To me, SCED is much more than economy and all these things. It absolutely puts in place systems and processes and streamlines the entire process of a load dispatch center. which hitherto remains clumsy. SCED is a very ruthless and cruel animal. It will not spare you. Even the last rupee or the last watt also it will squeeze out and will show you where you are inconsistent and what further can be done. My first-hand experience of more than 5 years in running SCED at the central level, I'm a different person after going through that. The marginals, the number of questions which have come, believe me, once you start getting the taste of marginals, you will be a different person for sure. Now that the market has come in our country, somehow again, the market and the physical systems are not yet getting related. The start time, stop time, the ramp, even our present market doesn't include even ramp constraints. So the physical system and market are not yet getting related in India, which has to come through SCED. To my understanding, everywhere else in the world, before the market came, SCED was in place and then they moved to market. In India, we are probably doing the other way around. We have market in place and now we are trying to bring in SCED. Anyway, better late than never. And it's time to set it right. We did introduce things like Merit App and MOD, but then organized way of doing optimization. Right way to do it, what Professor Zakir mentioned, which is provably correct, which follows all the criteria of optimization, including KKT, is absolutely essential. So with this, I will stop here. I can go on and on. Only thing I would say that we can't afford to delay it anymore. The mindset has to change right from the highest level to the last operator in the country. And we are doing very fundamental things. It will change the system. And gradually, when every state will start running it, we can couple, we can clearly see there are a number of papers which have come out of late, and then we can even couple with the market. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Soonee, for very insightful remarks, initial remarks, which are very, very essential for the general understanding of the audience who may not have a very good understanding of the benefits and the advantages and the potential that SCED actually carries with it. So with this, I would like to request Dr. Deb, if you could give your initial remarks on this potential of SCED in optimizing the system operation.
All right, thank you. Thanks again for the excellent presentation. From my perspective, the way I look at it is that this particular study actually focused on refining optimization in the sense that there is already a MOD system in place, and then you are bringing in SCED. In principle, they are both trying to do the same thing. It's the nuances around how the optimization is being done in terms of the technique. So SCED is using a linear programming model with additional constraints on system security and so on. So just in terms of the technique, the LP technique, that this is being used everywhere, and this is the norm internationally. So I think all the markets that use SCED or some other market clearing engine under different names, they all use LP. So I think this is, in terms of the technique that you have used, the methodology, this is certainly the global standard. Secondly, like, why do we need it? And we already saw the results, although it's based on about a month, like 32 days, that you have used for the study. It's already showing a benefit of about 1 crore, just under 1 crore per day, on top of MOD. So it's actually, the bar is already quite high in terms of an optimization already being done. So just in terms of the economics, this already makes the point very significantly. So if there are other states which are not really doing any kind of optimization, the scope will be much bigger. And we, of course, saw that with the NLDC 5 years ago, the savings were 2-3 crores per day. And then I think with the states, like at least the bigger states, the scope will be very much there. So I think in terms of pure economics, one of the questions that you raised, it's making a significant point. But there are like other benefits. It's kind of going to smooth the operation of the system. The more efficient generators will have a stable dispatch pattern because they will not be disturbed at all. They will be running all the time. And with the NLDC experience, we have tons of data to support that. It's going to capture the other technical constraints. We already have the ramping minimum gen type of constraints modeled. But as you pointed out, Professor Zakir, that there are a lot more that can be done. We can actually add hydro that you mentioned. We can co-optimize spinning reserve, which will be very much essential with all the renewables coming on the system. And then I think increasingly we have to worry also about the CO2 emissions. So there are international pressure on all the countries, particularly on India, because it's large coal base. So we kind of need to put in emissions constraint eventually in SCED as well. So I think all of those things can be done in a very seamless way. Once you have this optimization platform in place, we are talking about adding variables, adding constraints. So my last comment would be actually on the effort. So we talked about roughly 1 crore per day savings. The cost of implementation is relatively small. And you've already done a brilliant job of implementing it very quickly. It can be implemented right away. And the cost of the software side is probably about 30 lakhs. So in about, a fraction of a day, you can recover the cost. Of course, software is only one part. There are other costs on the human resource side, IT side, etc. But still, this is a very high benefit to cost ratio that I can think of. And we have actually from the World Bank side, we have implemented these sort of systems in other countries, and it has always been a real winner. So I'm very glad to see that this is happening. And again, I would hope these efforts actually go forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Dev. Dr. Dev, one important point that you highlighted is that Maharashtra State SLDC has been already doing very nice job in optimizing the generation scheduling. So this is what the savings are actually shown here. Potential savings are with respect to that. So therefore, the states which are not having very high level optimization that is being practiced at the moment would potentially have actually much more scope for further cost optimization. Thanks, Dr. Dev. Mr. Shashank ji, you are running the show at SLDC, so your initial remarks will be very important, please.
Yeah, thanks, Professor Zakir. It was a very nice presentation. So Soonee sir and Dr. Dev has already pointed out many important points. I will talk from state's perspective and bring on some different aspects. What I'm saying, looking at the overall broader needs of optimization, now what we can see from state side is there are multiple layers of optimization across specific operation strategies or planning strategies, and every layer you need to optimize to have a proper power system operations running. So SCED we take to be part of optimizing the real-time operation part. There can be AGC, there can be DLR. So what I'm saying is there will be multiple layers of optimization that states need to look into. Some structures we are already seeing in place at national level, but probably not replicated or thought over in their own fashions at states level. And when we looked at SCED at one of these objectives, because we have to start and work at each of these layers. If I talk of real-time operations, I can think of three. SCED, one of the most important to that, AGC being the other, maybe DLR can be the third optimization layer. If I talk of day ahead and short term, SCUC, as Zakir sir has rightly pointed out, comes into our picture. Forecasting For REs, forecasting, load forecasting comes into, and then comes the planning part. And here I want to connect this study to what both Soonee sir and Dr. Dev were also pointing out, and you you shown in your presentation, the value of information received from the SCED stream. It's enormous. So that will help in optimizing the transmission expansion planning. So wherever we go in and look in at an increased time horizons, there also these optimizations will be helpful. And you have brought in a very long-term aspect of even including the emissions. So I think a lot of things can be taken over ahead. And we at SLDC Maharashtra think that this is the starting point, because real-time operations is our primary objective. Economizing real-time operations is the key thing that we need to focus on, and that is why we are starting up with this SCED. And we hope to master the other layers of optimization also, so that we can run and understand the optimization into this modern aspects of our system and implement it.
Thank you, Mr. Jewalikar. Important point that the motivation that is coming out of your words, particularly when you say this is the starting point. There is a lot more to actually do in while going further. So, Mr. Debasis ji, your thoughts, initial thoughts.
Thank you, Professor Zakir. Now it is very clear that SCED is the only way. Now, why the states are not going for SCED? Because we don't feel it that now optimization is required, because now my MOD is doing perfectly okay. So when the constraints are increasing, then you cannot do through MOD, then you have to go for SCED. So best part is that we have to make system future ready. One part is make the system future ready. The second part is transparency. Now, whenever you are doing MOD somehow there is getting stuck. You never know where MOD is not obeying the security. But whenever you are going for the optimization through SCED, you are transparently making the schedule and obeying the security. So this is the only way to go. This is the optimized way to go. So not only the cost saving, you will get the information, additional information for regulators and planners. This is the point I want to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Debasis. Very important point that you having already an experience with the SCED implementation, giving this comment that this is the only way to go indicates a lot about the importance of SCED implementation. So I would now request Dr. Dey, if you could throw a little bit light. You have a lot of experience on this particular topic, SCED, particularly internationally and certainly at the Indian level. What are your experiences internationally that you see SCED is actually being put to or being employed in different actually optimization approaches, particular generation scheduling in different countries, that you can provide us some more light for the benefit of audience, that how actually it is being utilized or being employed globally already.
Sure, thanks. I guess my sort of first-hand experience with one of these models being implemented in real time as well as day ahead was in New Zealand. So they have a system called scheduling, pricing, dispatch software. It's a market clearing engine, which of course is very much a SCED engine at its heart. It's just that if you replace the costs with the market bids, then you essentially get a market clearing engine. And all the constraints or the LP framework, they remain the same. So in New Zealand, they actually used a language called AIMS rather than GAMS. Very, very similar. They're in the same family. And it was done probably over a sort of a 6-month period. So it actually amazed me that they could do a 30-minute sort of real-time optimization implementation within a 6-month period. Then Australia did the same thing. They actually used the same software SPD, same language aims, even quicker, and they went to actually 5 minutes straight away. And those software, those markets are in operation for more than 25 years. And then you then sort of move to Singapore. They actually use the New Zealand model to implement it later on. We have very similar system in Philippines. So that's kind of like the Asian side. Then, of course, in the US, we have all the ISOs. They have been using SCED since the 90s. So there's like plenty of experience. This is the norm. This is the standard. This is the future, and this is kind of like, like as you already proved through your study, that this is this is making the system run cheaper. The model itself, it runs faster than any other heuristics. It sort of helps to build capacity. It makes the system more efficient. And we are, like from the World Bank side, we are trying to implement it in some of the African systems at the moment. And we are, I guess with the developing countries, the challenge is that the concept is very well understood, but it seems to take years to get there. So I think it's really a question of how do you cut that inefficiency part to put something efficient in place. And as I said, like it can be done in months. It could be done in months about a generation ago. So we shouldn't really delay it any further. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Dey. Very insightful inputs on the experience that you have had with different countries, particularly New Zealand being one of the early adopters of this SCD, and then followed by several other countries as well. Thanks for providing these insights into how the other countries actually have been already implementing this SCD through different platforms. Platform, of course, doesn't actually is not that important, is not that relevant here. The main thing is optimize this SCD optimization model, and then it can be technically implemented in any platform. So thanks for those inputs. Now I would like to request Mr. Jewalikar ji. Maharashtra is one of the largest states. One of the largest SLDCs is MSLDC. And as I also highlighted earlier, and Dr. Dey also indicated that you have been already doing, in my opinion, a wonderful job in optimizing the overall scheduling through MOD. Now, how do you think this SCD, in your opinion, would benefit further the overall stay at state level and particularly other different stakeholders that are involved in this, in your opinion? Your thoughts, please.
Yeah, right. So as you rightly pointed out, and in our journey, as Professor Zakir was also indicating, before August we started these discussions, and we at SLDC also had a feeling like we already are doing this job. We are following whatever is the regulatory mandate. We are doing a level of optimization. We are taking consideration of the generator's constraint. What can be next? Is there anything left or not? But as the study clearly showed, further optimization definitely was possible, and there can be cost saving as the first benefit, which can be clearly seen through this pilot run of offline mode SCED for 1 month. So cost saving definitely can be pursued very easily by everyone. But more than that, I want to point out some more important aspects which I feel the stakeholders of Maharashtra and all stakeholders, it is not just the cost saving to the discoms who are procuring power and benefiting out of this. But if we look at, and as Professor Zakir pointed out in one of his slides, the likelihood that there will be less number of perturbations for the generators. And I think for the state generators, this was one of the important aspects that was being brought up to discussion tables of SLDC many times from generator side. And we ourselves were not clear what kind of mechanisms we need to have to even have a probability increased to address such issues. But now after this study, we see that there is a possibility of reducing these perturbations to an extent. This is second thing. So I am emphasizing on some very clearly distinguishable and identifiable benefits to the stakeholders. The third point is, particularly if we see the MSETCL being the largest buyer in the state and largest buyer from the interstate allocations also. But the way we are operating the MOD stack right now, the interstate stack is operated through an requisition mode separately handled by the respective DISCOM, and the intrastate optimization happens at the SLDC level. As the study and the report clearly indicates, there is a possibility of integrating and having a common SCED stack for both these, which can benefit even by retaining the decentralized MOD operation that is currently mandated in the state's grid code. So within these constraints and without much changes, these possibilities have opened up for cost saving. And fourth important aspect I want to bring up, which was also discussed, of the information. I have done some work in the transmission planning side also, and when I understood I can understand the value of the information that has been brought out through this SCED mechanism, the duals and the value of constraints, the value of increasing the declared capacity by 1 megawatt or decreasing the technical minimum capacity by 1 megawatt. It's huge. I even when I saw all these results at the first time, my clear opinion became, even if there is no cost saving, I will adopt this for the sake of this information, because this is huge, and I can see clearly it from the planning angle. We are talking, and we want generators to invest on the flexibility, but it is equally important to show how to choose my investment to be made in which of the machines. Which machine is overall going to reduce my SMP at state level by so and so kinds of investment. So this fourth point of information is also very, very important in my view. So this is giving me power of economy, power of flexibility, and power of information. So that is how I look at this SCED implementation.
Thanks, Mr. Jewalikar. Very, very powerful inputs and observations on this, as you have been, very closely involved in the entire study and analyzing the outputs and relating it how it could be potential use in different aspects of the operation of the Maharashtra grid, and that is coming out in your comments as well. I would like to add a little bit further on your comments for the generator side, stakeholder side. In addition to the reduced number of changes in the schedule, what we also found in this study is actually the potential of reducing the technical minimum, particularly for the generators with high variable cost. That actually unlocks a lot of potential savings in the system. So if there is a significant potential savings in the system by simply reducing little bit technical minimum of the high variable cost generators, that does not only benefit the system, but it potentially benefits the generator also, of course, through appropriate regulatory mechanism. There could be incentive mechanism for the generators to reduce the minimum technical minimum, which actually is the need of the hour in the RE integrated system. Thanks for those comments. Now I would request Soonee ji, you have been at the helm of implementing SCED at the national level in NLDC, POSOCO, now Grid India. You have a first-hand experience of the challenges in implementing SCED and the opportunities that actually it offered at the national level. So, what in your opinion, what are the key unlockers in this entire SCED setup, SCED platform or SCED mechanism, that actually results in the additional savings, and as highlighted by all of us, the security constraints and the powerful information that it actually gives. Well, what are your experience and thoughts that you could provide to for the benefit of audience?
Thank you. I think I couldn't have found a better moment of joy when I hear Mr. Jewalikar saying these things. He's the ambassador now of SCED. But let me also tell, you are right, I was at the helm of the affairs, and we have bought software worth hundreds of crores with all kinds of black box. Configuring them itself, we could never achieve. And there is no, I would not feel, at the cost of that many of the softwares could never be made operational. Why? Over-engineered. Softwares which have been supplied, they were not suited to our requirement, our maturity level. Now, the best part of this exercise is the coordination between MSLDC and IIT Bombay, and we all joining as cheerleaders. This academia and SLDC, synergy is something I would value the maximum. Everything has been done in-house. Look at the research scholars, Asutosh and Pratosh, the way they got involved. Every line has been written and understood why it is being written. How will it impact? It's no more a black box. We know what to change, and we have had tens of rounds of discussion, and we have been changing and understanding that why we are changing, why the results are coming. Mr. Jewalikar has been asking questions, hundreds of questions. Why is this price like this? What is the value of this shadow price? And I tell you, once we have gone through this, we are different person. So intrinsic capability which it has developed, I would say, is the most valuable. The youngest person in MSLDC who has been associated with it, the youngest research scholar who has been associated with IIT Bombay in this exercise, they would be our future, and they will take these things forward. Now, other aspects, I will not go into further details, but see, the question is MOD, it's doing, but I can't prove it. But when the professor tells that this is the scientific way, when Dr. Deb tells that this is the scientific way, you can run any solver and still get the same result. That takes the confidence to a different level. And I must thank that, forget about the money saving. And I fully agree that besides saving, we are now building intrinsic capability. And this will take us forward to the planning stage, to the transmission planning, and emission dispatch and whatnot. Now we know the basics. We'll only have to change our objective function. We have to only change our constraints, and each state can decide its own way. It has not to be done this. The last point I will make is, while, at a later stage, it will take a big shape. We may have to outsource it. We may have to get some professional, consultants or the vendors to do this. But by that time, we will know what we want to do. We will understand what we are doing. And that is the best part of this study. And I would say that this is the way to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Soonee, for these very, very powerful comments that you actually derived from your own experience at NLDC level, and how they could be very, very useful at the state level and moving forward with this SCED implementation. Thanks for those useful insights and the comments.
I missed mentioning now that you mentioned about NLDC. At NLDC, also we were trying to do this, but then we realized that no outsider can help us. And our own people at NLDC did it. Dr. Dev used to come and explain us that yes, you are doing right. Go ahead. And like this, within a year or so, we developed. And gradually, every day there was some improvement. And that is how the NLDC created, and now it's part of the grid code. We all know about it. Thank you. Sorry for interrupting.
Right. Very, very relevant point, as you highlighted in earlier comments also, that need and the essence of developing these tools or these models in-house, where we know what is happening within the model, within the whole tool, so that we can actually make the right intervention, because the grid is evolving. There are a lot of transformations happening in the grid, and that will demand a change in the entire SCED model itself. So therefore, it is very essential that it is developed in-house and it is understood well, so that it can be further adapted to the changes and the regulations that are coming as we move forward. Thanks for those comments. And now I would request Mr. Debasis, as Mr. Soonee already mentioned, you were very actively involved in SCED implementation at Grid India. So in your opinion now, so you have seen the other side at the national level, SCED implementation, and now you have been so much actively involved in this study as well at the state level. How do you think that this SCED implementation at the state level, and then possibly complementing with this SCED implementation at state level with the national grid level at overall pan India level, how do you see that this could potentially will come out in the months or years to go?
Thank you. Now the SCED implementation at NLDC is different, and SCED implementation at state is different, because NLDC is requisition based. Once the state furnishes the requisition, then it is optimized through optimization engine, and generations are accordingly dispatched. But in state, there are several inputs. Open access are there, that is under MOD. There are contracts, it is under MOD. So this is not exactly same, and the requirements from SCED optimization is different also, because we have some optimization need for procurement analysis also. Another point is that we want to mention that the central sector requisition, what is being considered at NLDC, that is also to be optimized at state level. So there are different input to be optimized at state level, which is exactly not being done at NLDC. So once it is optimized at state level, then it is going to NLDC, and it is being again optimized at NLDC level. So there are savings, there are optimization at state level, and subsequently when it is again going to NLDC, there will be optimized at NLDC also. The savings will be incremental at NLDC level only. So there is a synchronization, there will be synchronization, but only one point I want to mention here, that there is a requirement of data integration, there is a requirement of interfacing. So this thing will discuss accordingly once it will be integrated and done at national level. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Debasis. I would, before I move to the next questions, I would request the audience, there are some hands raised. There is a Slido tool for asking your queries and questions. I would request the team to once again put up the link for Slido in the chat box, and request the audience, those who have the queries, to put up the queries over there. You don't need to log in, you just need to actually go to that link, and then you can put up your questions, and also you can see the questions being put up by other participants. Thanks. I would again come back to Mr. Jewalikar ji. As we know that this SCED implementation study has shown a lot of potential, and a lot of discussions, constructive discussions that we had on the analysis and the outcome of the study, that actually fine-tuned the understanding of the potential of this SCED for the whole team that was involved. And we have also seen a very, very positive support, appreciation, and encouragement from the higher management of MSETCL in taking this exercise forward. So therefore, having done this first of its kind study in India at the state level, what is your outlook? Though you have partly indicated earlier, but I would like to request you to hear, tell us more about the overall outlook of SCED implementation that you have in plan at MSLDC, and how do you see this getting implemented at the MSLDC level?
Absolutely. You rightly pointed out, Professor Zakir, that we were supported tremendously from our management, the MSETCL management, the energy department. And I want to specifically mention Madam Abha Shukla, CS Energy, and Sanjeev Kumar sir, CMD MSETCL, who have supported us throughout this endeavor. And important part is, in Maharashtra, at energy department level, under the leadership of ACS Energy, we were already working on an energy transition plan. And why I am telling this is that generally the transition plans are considering the three important aspects of sources, the networks, and the loads. I am saying that we at SLDC are responding also with the fourth aspect of the controls. And SCED we see to be part of all the control mechanisms that will be needed in the in this long-term transition of any state and at national level. Because whenever we say the possibilities of optimization increase as the pool gets larger, and you just mentioned that it can happen between the states and then at national level, something that you indicated. But that also will need common control mechanisms and regulatory supports at all these levels. So we took up this initiative considering this to be a part and parcel of Maharashtra's larger energy transition plan. Point one. Second point, as you tell me, what we would be doing further, as we have already means our plan is like will have the necessary regulatory approvals for that. And subsequent to that, right now, as we know, we have conducted this study from 1 month's data, and that too from the past. So now we plan to do a pilot, which will be an online parallel pilot, by keeping the existing system running and live simultaneously. So wherein we can compare the schedules maybe at the day end itself, and generate some information for all the stakeholders for 6 months time. We are right now in the phase of working, seeking necessary approvals, then planning and designing what all would be needed to be done for this kind of a pilot, the infrastructure needs, the human resource needs, the capacity building needs. So we, in second step, we plan a pilot of 6 months. We want to bring those results to the consideration of stakeholders, because when we are implementing the basic DSM regulation in Maharashtra, we had a very excellent way of working with stakeholders established under the leadership of Maharashtra regulators in Maharashtra. At each step of implementation of DSM regulations, all the concerned stakeholders, may that be generators, may that be discoms, and we have our own complexities of working in Maharashtra. So they were all involved. So we intend to involve all those people when we are conducting this long-time pilot, share the results with them, and then move ahead into the after completion of the successful pilot. We will then seek for the necessary modifications, maybe on the dispatch code side or the regulatory side. That is what we intend to do. So this year we intend to complete this long duration simultaneous pilot and simultaneously build up our in-house capabilities to do these things.
Thanks for thanks for giving us the inputs on your plan for implementing SCED at the MSLDC level, and I think that will be very useful. There might have been some audience who would be certainly interested in looking at what are the next major steps that are being taken up at the SLDC level for its implementation. Thanks for those clarifications. Now my question is to Mr. Debasis. In your opinion, what should be the next stage for, after this we did SCED implementation initiative study at state level? what would be the next? Of course, some of the aspects I highlighted in the presentation, but if you could throw a little more light on, what could be the next steps to now further expand the horizon of this SCED implementation beyond one state level?
Yes, thank you. Now, once the SCED is implemented in one state or multiple states, so we'll get some SMPs at state level. So once the SMPs are available, so you immediately identify the states so that you can integrate and get some cost saving. So it is very easily doable because we have already standardized the tool. So once the tool is standardized, integration will be no issue. This is one point. Second point is that time synchronization. Once the SCED is getting implemented in state level, time of operation should be synchronized at the time of implementation only, so that gradually going forward we can integrate the states. Once the states are integrated at RLDC level, gradually all the states can be integrated in NLDC level. This is the way forward. We can gradually implement, but 2-3 points need to be corrected. One point is the data integration and data filtering, because all the data cannot be stored or communicated to RLDC and NLDC level. So proper filtering should be there so that the required data only go to RLDC and NLDC level, so that it can be done. Then the data storage and data handling and archiving. These are the limited points which can be considered while designing the system at NLDC and RLDC level. And another point I want to mention here, that another point to be considered, that get closer harmonization. Now presently the get closer is not harmonized across the states and at RLDC and NLDC level. So these are the requirements. The get closer harmonization is required once we go forward with integration at RLDC and NLDC level. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Debasis. It's very important, as also mentioned by Mr. Jewalikar. This is the starting point. So while we are doing this, we should certainly keep eye on what next, how to further improve it, and how to actually bring the entire assets and the resources in the ambit of this overall optimization of the entire system at not only at state level but at regional and national level. Thanks for those inputs. My question is now for Mr. Soonee ji. I know you are staunch supporter of coupling market and SCED. You have been highlighting you have a passion for this coupling of the market and SCED, as I have understood it over so many discussions with you. What is, in your opinion, their potential and how potentially it could actually be realized in the Indian power sector, where this SCED and market actually can be coupled in a way that they are complementing each other, rather than being seen as a separate two guiding mechanisms for this operation of the system?
Yeah. थैंक यू जकीर साहब, आपने तो हमारी दुखती रग पर हाथ रख दिया। देखिए 1990 के दशक में we had ECC report and there were discussions for a couple of years, centralized versus decentralized. And if you read those records, you will understand the federal governance of this country and the extreme difficulty of centralizing the whole thing. Academicians and researchers, consultants very clearly tell us that centralized is better. It's no brainer, but how do we implement it? That is the question, because different states are at different level of maturity. They want freedom and choice. So we have to start from that point. And that is why we have gone for decentralized scheduling in the country. At least we could move, but getting it whole centralized is impossible. If it is extremely difficult, if not, I say it is impossible. It's only it happens in theory, particularly for a country like India. Even for a country like US, if you say that do it for pan US, they won't be able to do it. So having realized that, we have gone for power exchange. Now the power exchange which we have gone through is a good start, but a very poor substitute. It is decoupled from the physical system. It is just takes the incremental things. It does something. It has given us a feel of market, but it is nowhere near SCED. Now we have done that. So there are two extremes. One is go for completely centralized. The other extreme is only decentralized power exchange. Neither of them are, I mean, fully centralized is not possible, though it may be ideal, not possible. And complete this PX is also no good. We are stagnating at single digit and not getting anything. So now what to do? If you look at internationally, there are some literature that you have a regulated stack, you have a competitive market. After all, SCED and market, to me, they look exactly the same. Same supply demand curve, same price discovery, same MILP, and same duals, and everything is same. Only thing is, as Dr. Dev also mentioned, instead of a variable cost, if you build in bids, then you get into market. Otherwise, you SCED. So that is why, with a lot of discussion with many hardcore practitioners, we realize that if we can couple power exchange and SCED together, we may not achieve 100% of centralized, but we will come very close to that. And I believe it will be a game changer, not for only for India, for the world as a whole. That those who are trying to think or trying to preach that go for complete centralized are in utopia. They don't know how to get that thing done. And only going for this shallow portfolio-based power exchange, that also is no good beyond starting point. So the only option left to us is to couple these two together. And the saving is of the order of 10,000 crores. And we will learn from each other. Interestingly, I must also avail this opportunity that the way IIT Mumbai and MSLDC has worked, they have set a benchmark, but we have many more coming up. We have IIT Gandhinagar with Gujarat. We have IIT Kanpur with UP, IIT Hyderabad with Telangana, and with MPs also coming up. So we are getting many things being done. So as Mr. Debasis explained, if we have all the state SCD in place, they have the choice. Gujarat, Maharashtra wants to work together, please do it. We will couple them. You want to couple MP, fine, you do this. Bring all three together, that's even better. If somebody wants to go out for some time, please go out. Want to join, please join. Like this, we get Western region coupled together. Then we have like this at national level. All SCDs getting coupled. And then power exchanges, we have multiple power exchanges. They also have to be coupled. And then power exchange and NLDC, India coupled, and why not neighboring country also? The problem, the thing is that the formulation is same and it is so easy to couple. And if we do this, Mr. Narsimhan was once listening to that and he said, "The baap hoga." Some market ka bhi baap banega. SCED and power exchange together, I don't think anywhere in the world they have tried this. So we are a believer of Madhyam Pantha. We believe in Buddha philosophy. We will have both, but still achieve very close to that. Thank you.
Thanks, Soonee. Very passionate comments on this very important topic. And though it may take some time to reach to that, but I think there is an essence and essential need to actually look at that and how potentially that can be done as we move forward. Again, as I mentioned earlier, this is the beginning, and there is a lot actually more to do as we move forward. So in the interest of time, I would, as of now, hold on the bilateral these questions within the panel. I would take questions from the audience before I request for the concluding remarks from the panelists. So there are some questions. Some of the questions the audience have been already replied, which were primarily in terms of numbers and the percentage of cost and calculation related. But there are some questions that I would like to take for the benefit of audience here, which are, again, as I mentioned earlier, here coming up based on the polls of the audience. The first question is, could the panelists shed further light on how the data architect in the power sector could be improved to SCED countrywide? So I had highlighted in one of the slides earlier. So this is what the question is actually in that direction, the data structure. Maybe Dr. Dey, if you could, give your comments first on this particular query from the audience.
Yes, thank you. I think in terms of the data requirement for SCED, I think this is sort of well understood. It's not, like, I mean, it has been in operation in LDC for a while. I guess one of the issues will be with the demand data and the issues with distributed resources like solar panels on rooftops and so on. So I think that's where we'll need a lot more sort of accuracy on the forecast for RE, and also mechanisms like peer-to-peer trading that the discoms can actually adopt to manage some of the solar penetration in the distribution side within the discom segment, and then sort of, like upward manage the data for SCED. So I think there's a lot of room for innovation there. We can actually use artificial intelligence for predicting demand. So that's where I see the key challenge. I think with the generated data, that also needs to improve a lot, especially if we want to do the allocation of spinning reserve through SCED, because that side of data has not been developed in India at all. So I think it's done to some extent in NLDC, but the state level data is pretty poor. And even at NLDC, there are like several parameters missing. The last point is that integration of all of these items, the better demand forecast from the DISCOM, the real-time parameters for the reserve model, probably even the emission coefficients, that's sort of the other issue that needs to be captured. How do you actually integrate all of this stuff into the SCADA system and then connect to SCED? So I think that's probably the area of development going forward. There are many more issues, but in the interest of time, I'll just stop here for now. Thank you.
Thanks for those important inputs. I would like to add, as I mentioned, this data structuring and the template for SCED is very, very important, particularly if we look at futuristic implementation of SCED in all the states ideally. And then harmonization of these templates and the data and will become very important. So therefore, there is a need to have some broader understanding of the data structure that is required in this SCED, so that there is, in the long run, better harmonization done in this. Any additional comment, Soonee ji, you would like to put in?
I will only echo what you and Dr. Dev have mentioned. System operation is half IT, and IT's half-life is further getting reduced. We need to, as a system operator, we need to go to the regulator and tell them that we need investments in IT augmentation, in capacity building. NOAR has done yeoman's job today countrywide. It's a world-class open access registry which has been brought in, and that's how so much of trade can happen. We need APIs, we need IT, we need SCADA, and this, but all these things is doable. Our people know it. They have done it. We have done it in case of NLDC SCED. It comes out and again goes back into the system. It is doable. The only thing is you need to put some resources. That there is no doubt about it. Without that, it will not happen. But then the amount of saving which it will come and the way forward, IT infrastructure, IT capability, data interfaces, standardization, harmonization, whatever you may call. And also, I must tell you, this is not a problem for India. It's just problem. You attend hundreds of webinars of Europe where they try to harmonize their data. Look at the amount of effort they make. We need to do similar thing here. And then there is no option but to do this. And we are much better as far as IT is concerned. Only thing is invest in it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. So next question is, how will real-time data from the state transmission network be integrated into the SCED? I mean, this is, if I may start with the inputs, is real-time data is not necessarily required for SCED because it is block-wise exercise that is being done. It is the scheduling of the generation. So I'm not very sure about the context of the question, but maybe anyone from the panel can, pitch in and try to answer this question.
So basically what we are meaning is optimal power flow. Almost all the states run power flow, but they need to introduce the cost also. And I have not seen any OPF being run either by CA or by CTU. So that culture has to come. And I fully agree that network, the locational marginal price has to be there. We do calculate the transfer capability offline and it works very fine. But now all the SCEDA, which has been replaced in all the SLDCs and RLDC or are being replaced, are capable of transferring the network data. And again, here, a lot of efforts would be required, but it's doable. And PSSC works very well. We have 250 licenses. We have black belt PSSC operators who know how to do it. We need to give them a little bit of support and encouragement so that they move towards network and OPF and take the SCED plus OPF, without which we can't go beyond a point. Network is absolutely essential. And that brings us to the question which Mr. Jewalikar and Dr. Deb mentioned. For future, when we want to have network expansion, where is the congestion occurring, where the lines have to be built, all those information will also come. So network has to be part of it. I stop here. Thank you.
Thanks.
I will add, and definitely what Soonee sir has said is 100% correct. And considering both these questions relating to data, going ahead OPF plus SCED or both the directions, I just want to make one statement. We all, particularly since I'm looking into the states as SLDCs, I feel we need to think of our state SLDCs as the knowledge companies more than the the minds and brains of power system, but these are knowledge companies. These are not departments of transmission engineering or something of that kind. But I have a strong feeling that with increasing presence of data, more bytes flowing than the electrons flowing on the network, these will be and need to be run like knowledge companies.
Right. Thanks for your input. So as I had already highlighted in the presentation also, that OPF is something which need to be considered as we move forward. There's another question around tools. I think I would skip that question because as we highlighted, that tool is not important. That is not very relevant. The relevant is how we develop the model, and then there can be any sort of tools that are available, whether commercial or open source, that could be used for implementing these different SCED modules. Now, there is one more question: how the new workforce adequacy guidelines for LDCs incorporated the need to upgrade HR and capacity building to enable SCED. This question is directed to Soonee ji. If you could answer this particular question.
Yeah. Almost everybody knows the report Kabil, capacity building of Indian load dispatchers. All the load dispatchers under the fold have put in their mind and created a report. But still, as Jewalikar ji said, it's a knowledge industry. It needs not only headcount, the skill set, and continuous capacity building. So for the first time, I am seeing that such a guidelines have come from ministry about the workforce adequacy. So this is a very good development. I commend all those who have worked on this. And now it's a question of getting it translated. Gradually, regulators would listen to it, and we would have resources in all the SLDCs and STUs, which is so very essential. There is absolutely no doubt. Wherever I have gone, whichever conference I have attended, anywhere, the main issue is capacity, intrinsic capacity, and there is no doubt about it. Thank you.
Thanks for your inputs on this question. There is another question: what are the financial impacts on discounts that generators? I think this has been answered through different discussions already. I would, in the interest of time, skip this question. What was the technical minimum trajectory considered for different state-owned plants requirements versus in line with CA guidelines? Jewalikar ji.
Yeah, currently in Maharashtra it is 55%. So even though the guideline has charted out the trajectory to reach up to 40%, right now the period under study, whatever technical minimum is in Maharashtra as per the grid code, it is 55%.
And I would like to add on to this that there is already in practice sometimes some of the plants for different reasons go even below that value. That's where we were highlighting that there is a potential additional scope of optimizing the cost if these particularly high variable cost generators will go further below than their technical minimum. And the other question is, what are the practical difficulties to do SCED for a larger network? Practical challenges, I think, is what the question intends to in implementing SCED for a larger network. I think, in my opinion, it's a matter, as I mentioned in the presentation also, we have discussed it in different discussions internally with MSLDC and Soonee and others who were involved. There is one additional advantage of this SCED, that is scalability. So it is much easier than MOD. It is scalable. So therefore, in my opinion, technically speaking, irrespective of the network size, I think the SCED is very much scalable, not only in terms of network size, but also in terms of how many constraints you want to actually add into that. So any other panelist who would like to add on this particular question?
Yes, so we have, yes, sorry, please, Dr. Dev, go ahead. I was only about to tell that Dr. Dev should be the right person to answer.
No. I just wanted to say that, like back in the sort of mid 90s, like I mentioned about the New Zealand SPD. So that was actually a fully nodal model with DC approximation to power flow for 250 odd substations in the country. I mean, it's a small country, but 250. So this could be actually implemented. It was a 30-minute block at the time. It used to take 2-3 minutes for the LP to solve. But as you mentioned, Professor Zakir, that this is very easily scalable. The real challenge is actually getting the data and the quality of the data and some of the real-time inputs from SCED. And New Zealand also implemented this dynamic line monitoring system, dynamic line rating system. So actually the transfer capabilities were changing in real time. So all of these things could be done with very similar platform like GANs 30 years ago. So I think, like that's not really an issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will only add here, see, once we go for a large system, there are issues. And for example, at national level itself, we realize that all the data which we get has to undergo a plausibility check, bad data detection, the proper substitution, cleaning of data, massaging of data. All those things are part of any large project of this kind. Then we get into infeasibility as the system becomes bigger. Or at the, many equality constraints, inequality constraints. Then how do we ride through? We learned the big M penalties. How do we grade them? And Dr. Dev tells us that the penalty should be decided by the regulator after due consideration. All those things are the future work which we will need to do as the constraints will increase. We will get into that, and that would require terrific capacity building of the regulators also, that they understand that what the SCED is doing, where are the exogenous things where we need their intervention also. I think we should also take regulators also along with us. Thank you. And Dr. Dev can supplement this on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Soonee ji. So my question now is to Jewalikar ji. Though we are running short of time now here, I promise the audience that we will conclude in next 5-6 minutes maximum. MSLDC is the first state in India that has carried out this exercise at state level. So based on your experience, that has been derived from this particular exercise, what would be your suggestions or key messages for your counterparts in other states?
Oh, so I won't give any suggestions or messages, Dr. Zakir, but definitely I would like to share whatever we have experienced during this exercise, because recently by the initiative taken by NLDC, we some of the state level dispatchers, we met at one of a common training program, and there my realization after discussion with many of them is that we face many of the similar kinds of issues which were just discussed about the capacity and all. But to do this kind of exercise, I think what we also needed to do as a first part was, we have to believe that there is further optimization always possible than the way we are doing it. So that was our starting point, I think. Okay, we need not be happy and just saying that this is my way of doing my current practice, because the way it is defined, and that is the optimization of last resort. There can always be something better, and this that was our experience. Second of interesting experience that I would like to share will be, we have definitely there is a resource crunch, but there always is a possibility of finding some hidden talent amongst the people who are available with you, and that is what my experience within this exercise was. And one of my very junior engineer just could come out with his own GANs programming, and we have shared his whole of his programs also in our report. So that was a very interesting and some experience that rather made us more enthusiastic. So yes, there are resource crunches, but there is also a possibility that you will find some hidden talent. Third thing I felt very, very essential is, yes, development of in-house capabilities is a must for all of us. In-house capabilities may not be sufficient for 100% of the things to be done in-house, but developing in-house capabilities, in-house understanding of what exactly is happening, that will give the state SLDCs more control over the systems that we are owning actually. The data that is with us is under our ownership, but we must be able to fetch more and more data, create more and more information out of it, and create more and more knowledge for the sake of stakeholders out of it. That is what we have to try. Because what I sincerely believe is, what dispatchers can see in their own states, there is no other agency who can see that. So it will be our responsibility at the state dispatchers to come out with whatever we are seeing and whatever we see is needed to be done into the system. By this feeling increases our responsibility hugely. It makes me, when I'm frightened with this thought at times, but I clearly can see this. Third and last 2 points I want to make is, we also have to grow our understanding about the interconnectedness maybe between the states and the larger system at national level. That is what I sincerely and humbly feel, that we need to enhance our understanding on that. And last but not the least, there needs to be platforms of interactions among the state. As Debasis sir pointed out, we need to discuss how the harmonization between the gate closures need to be done, what kind of data sharing mechanisms we need, and what kind of other issues we need. So this is what I have seen and felt throughout this exercise, which I want to share with all of the state SLDCs in particular.
Thank you, Jewalikar ji. Very, very constructive comments and the conclusions that you made in these statements, and very relevant inputs. I would, as we are already running out of time, we have overshot the time. So I would now request to give the final concluding remarks from each of the panelists, maybe starting with Dr. Dev. Final remarks, please.
Thank you. I think I'll just keep it very brief. It's really great to actually hear the outcome of this study, and I think there's a lot of promise, and I think it's a question of fulfilling that by implementing SCED. And I hope that with the support of Mr. Jewalikar, this will happen very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dev. Debasis ji.
My comment will be that you can at least check, implement, don't implement fast, you just implement the process, check your system whether you can optimize, what are the informations available, and then go forward. Thank you.
Soonee ji, please.
Oh, yes. First of all, Jewalikar ji is our ambassador
Exactly.
of SCED. And he will bring all the states. I'm already observing it. I met Gujarat Chief Mr. Bua, Mr. Mishra, and Mr. Suresh Babu, and all of them are saying that yes, now that Maharashtra has done, we will also do. And matching input is coming from all the paired IITs. So that's a very good development. 2-3 points I will only make further. Mr. Jewalikar mentioned in a number of times is the great effort made by Forum of Load Dispatcher, MySCED. Look at the name, MySCED. It is MySCED. So every state has to do it, and CMD Grid India has thrown its full weight. And in every meetings, we have found representative from RLDC and NLDC coming. So Fold is a force to reckon with. All the states will join there, and I'm sure Fold will take it further. Next point, Forum of Regulators. It's also another Fold. Fold is the creation of Forum of Regulator, by the way. So I've been talking to Forum of Regulators. They are also equally enthusiastic, and I look forward to MERC taking it up in FOR, and FOR would also support in helping wherever is required. Last point I want to make one, which is slightly uncomfortable, but must be mentioned in this. And very rightly said, we need intrinsic capability. There isn't any doubt about it. We must take our academia at every stage. Now we are no more underdeveloped countries. Our professors are the best, and our research scholars, the type of work they have done, I am proud of them. But it's a huge work. We can't expect professors to do all the heavy lifting all the time. And nor are our people also ready. They have other work to do. So we need vendors. There we need contractors to do this. That also there is no doubt about it. But presently, the capacity of the contractors is just not what we expect them to be. None of them had any exposure on LP. They were writing lakhs of lines of codes to do such an optimization. This is quite disheartening that in such a country like India, that 5 or 7 states where we have gone into the depth, that everything is still being done in a long code. So we need to take the vendors also along with us. We need to groom them also for this. And there is nothing to feel shy about it. We are all learning in the process. And that's how the Fold for and the vendor development with the support from academia. If all these 4 forces unite, nobody can stop India from showing to the world how SCED, market, and at a national level, we can couple everything and come out with the magic system marginal price of all India. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the final concluding remarks. I would like to thank all the panelists. I think it was, in my opinion, and I'm sure in audience would be in line with my my comment, is that we had a very powerful panel with panelists having a lot of experience in their own domains, first-hand experience on this topic, and a lot of knowledge, a lot of very constructive information that has come out of the panel discussion. And I believe and I'm sure that this will be of tremendous benefit to all the stakeholders in India and possibly abroad as well. And we look forward for further development in this space at MSLDC level and other states, and eventually at the pan-India level. I would like to thank on behalf of all the organizing team that was involved, to all the panelists for your valuable time and your discussions and your insights in these different aspects of this SCED. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I would like to hand over to Dheeraj for, I think there are final concluding remarks, vote of thanks to be done. Over to you, Dheeraj.
Yes, sir. Thank you,
Thank you,
Professor Zakir.
GIL. Thank you, GIL.
Thank you, sir.
True.
So with this panel discussion, we have come to an end to this event. So further, I would like Pratosh to give a vote of thanks. So Pratosh, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Dheeraj. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the organizing team, I take this opportunity to extend my heartfelt gratitude to all those who have made today's webinar on SCED implementation a resounding success. First and foremost, I would like to thank all our esteemed guests, Mr. Jewalikar, Mr. Soonee, Mr. Debasis, Dr. Deb, and Professor Zakir for taking out time from their busy schedule for this event. Also, I would like to thank the MSLDC team and the GIL team for their engagement during the webinar. Lastly, I would like to thank all the participants for joining us in this webinar and making this event remarkable. Thank you all and have a great evening.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining and making this webinar successful.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.